how does karma fit into this? I guess the question would be, how does it fit into freedom from thought? And if you look at what karma is, it's intentional action. It's not just action. So intentional action means action that is thought, intended, for it to be karma. So an act by itself without intentionality is not karma. Okay? So just be clear. The Buddha said to the bhikshus, he said, I say to you, O bhikkhus, setana karma, or setana action, with either body, speech, or thought or mind, is what I call karma. In other words, intentional action of words you intend, of speech, but even intention of nothing spoken or said creates karma. It's the intentionality that gives it its inertia, gives it its momentum, okay? So if karma, how does karma fit into this? Then you could say with every intentional action driven by greed or anger and avidya, let's use avidya because that's a word we use tonight, and greed would be thirst, craving, and anger can be everything from mild irritation to outright hostility and violence, a whole range of things. Intentional actions, where your intentions are driven by those three, then create what is called karma. But then karma, everybody use, I know it's like, I should be happy because like karma is a word that's been adopted into English now. So yay. But the bad news is it's like totally misunderstood. So karma doesn't just mean what you do, which a lot of people think, and karma doesn't mean what happens to you only. It's both and neither. Karma actually is a three-tiered process. There is karma, which is intentional action called setana, C-E-T-A-N-A. So intentional action is the first, setana. This leads to the next phase, which is called vipaka, which means ripening. And then the third place is phala, which means fruit. So intentional action, with all the variants that would surround that action, then sets in motion a process of ripening and maturing of that action with its results or effects or consequences, which then eventually manifest as a fruit or a retribution. Now the fruit and the retribution is called karmically neutral. In other words, it does not generate further karma. It's only the result playing out. Once that's played out, it's gone. Unless, of course, in response to that, you generate more. Okay, so people have to understand, so karma is not interminable. It plays out, the fruit of karma plays out and it's over. So in every moment, you're in the process of receiving fruit, for well or woe. Let's say tonight being here is good fruit. You know, okay, so you're here tonight, that's a result of some intentional good action. What happens after you leave here, I can, but it might not be so good, and then that's the other. But any moment you're in, you are in the moment of all three. You are intentionally doing things with body, mouth, and mind. You are in a process of ripening, although you probably don't know you're not aware of it unless you're really quiet and sitting a lot and kind of getting in tune with that process. And you're in the process of reaping fruit, phala. And it's happening in the present moment at all times. So that's what karma is. Karma isn't just action or what's happening to you. So emotions can arise. Let's say this is part of vipaka and phala. Negative emotions, powerful negative emotions arise. These have seeds, okay? The way you would get at it is you, first of all, acknowledge that the emotion has arisen. You don't deny it and repress it and blame somebody else. You make me angry. No, I'm angry. That's a difference, okay? And so you then use that moment to say, okay, here is perhaps a fruit of something, and perhaps it's a ripening of something, but at the intentional ground, the only place I can work, I can deal with this and stop at this point and not just keep going with it. So you go back to intentionality and say, okay, I acknowledge this, I recognize it, here it is, it's anger, it's jealousy. It's very powerful. It doesn't mean you're going to get rid of it immediately, but by quietly, and this is what meditation helps you do, quietly observing this, you get to isolate it, from a complete taking over of you. And you can see it as something you might be able to get a harness on. You might be able not to turn it into words and actions. Okay, so you pull back two of the three karmas. And then how do you get it out of the mind, out of the system? You begin a process of unraveling it, untying it. And so this is the next question is, how does one's negative emotions work as a tool for Bodhi? It's the best tool you got. I could give a wonderful lecture or a mediocre lecture, and it's not a good tool. The best tool you have is your afflictions. I'm sorry. Not my afflictions, because I could give you mine and they'd be worthless to you. And you could give me yours and they'd be worthless to me. The only ones that count are the ones that you have. Your precious little afflictions. My precious little afflictions. These are the tools of Bodhi. Where does Bodhi come from? Right through afflictions. Not from, and that's why he says, looking for it outside of this world or outside of your world or outside of your being is like looking for a rabbit with her horns. Okay? So Bodhi, it's like the emotions are the key. So one way you look at it is the negative emotions are keys that unlock the shackle that we put over our Bodhi. So we've taken the Bodhi, what he calls the free-flowing. If you want to use water, you can use the other way. The water is free-flowing, and we put these little dams. And these are our afflictions, are the klesha. And so all you do is you dissolve the dam. Okay? So in front of my house, there's a curb, a gutter. The leaves come down, and the debris clog that gutter. And if I don't go and take those leaves out of there, untangle that mess, the water will flow over into my garage, into my living room. I've always wanted a sunken living room with a pool, but not like that, okay? So by taking that out, the water flows in the channel and it goes on. It's free-flowing. So every place we get stuck, that's klesha. Where our Bodhi, thus being nature, is stuck is our particular negative emotions. So it's like, these are the good knowing advisors. These are the Kalyana Mitras. Say, no, Kalyana Mitras, Amitabha, Guan Yin. No, it's your afflictions. And whatever they look like, that's who they are. Anger looks like this, that's your good knowing advisor. Meanness, shame, they all have different faces. Those are your good knowing advisors. Get to know them, welcome them, embrace them, say thank you, you've come, because without you, I can't get enlightened. In other words, when they're turned around, they become Bodhi. If they're not turned around, they will continue to obstruct. And if you pretend they're gone, they'll obstruct even more. And if you blame somebody else, then you've added insult on top of injury, and it's just going to go on and on. So the interesting thing is, there's nothing mystical about this. What's the key to awakening? Your crap. Sorry. Your afflictions. That's the key of awakening. That's the good knowing advisor, because it's right on that space that the turning has to occur to reclaim, restore. It wasn't that way. It isn't that way originally, but we turn it into that. That's that dysfunction again. So one way I was thinking about it, if you think about a rope, and let's say I'm doing a raft now. I'm not doing a raft, I'm doing a rope. This is the parable of the rope. I just made it up. It's not a Buddhist parable. Okay? So you're on one shore, right? And this shore is troubled and has lots of snakes and vipers and all this sort of thing. And then there's the other shore, which is like paradise, and you want to get from this shore to the other shore, and there's this raging water in between. Okay? And there is no raft, there is no twigs, but you got a rope. And interestingly enough, the rope is the perfect length you need to stretch it from one side to the other. Great. But then you find out there's knots in the rope. Damn. And by having knots in the rope is shortened and you can't get to the other shore. So what do? Cut the knots out. Duh, won't work, right? Because the rope's the only thing you got to get to the other shore. Untie the knots and you lengthen the rope a little more. Untie another one, you lengthen the rope a little more, and pretty soon it reaches the other shore. Okay, so I'm basing on a parable of the raft with the rope. The knots are the afflictions, the negative emotions. You cannot cut them out, even as frustrating, and some of them are tied really well. Some of us are Eagle Scouts when it comes to making afflictions. We do not make mediocre ones. We do not make ones that are loosely. We make ones that are solid adamantine, vajra, diamond-like afflictions. You go ahead. Nah, you're not going to touch my afflictions. Bullets bounce off it. Well, it's just more work you got to do. More pressure, more heat. So you untie the knot, pretty soon the rope reaches to the other shore. So I guess on the emotions, what I'm saying is don't be afraid of them, don't deny them, and don't guilt trip yourself over them. You know, basically these are the Buddhas of your nature who are just a little confused. You know, it says the Buddha, you know, a Buddha confused is a living being unconfused is a Buddha. This is the non-duality again. So there's no Bodhi without untying the knots of afflictions. And what's interesting, what's really good about this is it's so existential and subjective. It's like, well, let's see, what's the list? You don't have to go. You don't even have to memorize them. Where are you afflicted? Huh? No, that's the only thing that counts. Somebody else's afflictions only count when you're a good knowing advisor and you get rid of your own and you want to help them. Before that, it's not going to work. So you untie your own. So, brief answer. Let me end with a poem, because I thought of this. This is not a Buddhist poem, but I think it's very Buddhist in its flavor. And it's from a Persian poet called Rumi. I don't know when Rumi's time was. Rumi's very old. Maybe about the time of the Sixth Patriarch, for all I know. Anyhow, another night. But he's got this wonderful poem. Let me read it to you in short, because I think it expresses really the essence of this passage tonight, but also what we're talking about is the emotions and bodhi and afflictions. He says, I'll read it slowly, this being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Now, we could change the Buddhist flavor of this. Be grateful for whatever affliction comes, because each has been sent from a guide from within. So his take on this is to embrace these things, because these are guides to one's spiritual nature and liberation. But in the same sense, you could just say the guest house is this body, and the guests that are coming are the dust of our own afflictions. And you welcome them, you embrace them, you laugh, because each one is a guide, a good knowing advisor to your true nature. In fact, these guests are the guests of your own making. You've invited them. So anyhow,